Hello everyone, my name is Electoli, Faculty of English at Edufy Institute, and welcome back again for another lessons on grammar. So today we're going to continue on with the various agreements and concepts that we are talking about in the last lesson as well. So if you're joining me after the last class, then you are going to have lots of fun as we continue on to know more about the rules of the agreement, that is the subject and verb agreement. How do we write the subject? How do we write the verb according to that subject? It's what we are going to deal with today. So this is agreement rules, and we will now focus on the rules that we have to follow when we have indefinite pronouns as the subject. So that means in grammar, what are indefinite pronouns? Pronouns are words that are used to substitute a noun. Words that are used instead of a noun, in place of a noun. So that means indefinite pronouns is one of the type of pronouns that we use when we are using grammar. So in this case, we have indefinite pronouns. Indefinite pronouns refers to non-specific people, places, or things. For example, if I say something, someone, that means I am not referring to exactly a particular person. I'm not naming them. I'm not giving you an exact identity, but I'm referring to someone, right? So that means it's a non-specific thing. So therefore, indefinite pronouns refers to non-specific things. Now, what do we do in case of agreements when we have this non-specific persons or things or places? That is, most indefinite pronouns are treated as singular subjects. We have to understand that indefinite pronouns are mostly treated as or usually treated as singular subjects, and therefore the verbs also become singular. But there's another point. We also use plural verbs for certain plural indefinite pronouns. So we will have to look into what are those plural indefinite pronouns and what are those singular indefinite pronouns. And we also have certain indefinite pronouns that will either have a singular or plural verb. That means we will have to treat them either as a singular or as a plural as well. And those are the rules that we must follow when we are trying to write a sentence, when we are trying to relate the subject and the verb. So, three things that you'll have to remember. First is that indefinite pronouns refers to non-specific place, person, or thing. Second point is that indefinite pronouns are usually used as a singular subject, but some indefinite pronouns will also be used as a plural subject. Third point is that some indefinite pronouns can either be used as both singular and plural, basing on the idea that they are referring to multiple or single items. So let's move on to this one. Which are the indefinite pronouns that should be considered as singular? So pronouns ending a thing, where, body, or one. That means somewhere, something, somebody, anybody, right? Or one, everyone, each other, another, all of this, anyone, we're all considering them as singular indefinite pronouns. And what do we do when we have singular indefinite pronouns? We use singular verbs for those pronouns. So let's take a look at these examples. Something falls from the table. Where is the verb here? Falls. What is this? Plural verb, right? This is a, I'll repeat it again. Is that it? Right. This, what is false? This is a singular verb. Now, why is this a singular verb? Because it is ending with the indefinite pronoun something. Again, we have this sentence, the second sentence. Each of the participants responds promptly. Now, again, we have each, which is under this one. Pronouns that are considered singular. And therefore, what is the word that I will use? Singular verb response. Second sentence, can you identify the verb in the sentence? Absolutely. Is the verb, right? Is a singular verb. Why is this considered a singular verb? Because here I have used an indefinite pronoun, anyone. So indefinite pronouns like anyone, something, somewhere, somebody, each, everyone, another are all considered as singular indefinite pronouns, and therefore the verbs that come with it will also be singular in nature. Let's look at the next point. Which are the indefinite pronouns that we can consider as plural? Words like many, few, several, both, and others. You have this information, then it'll be easy for you to write any statement in the correct form. And what is that? Whenever you have indefinite pronouns such as many, or few, or several, or both, or others, then you can write them in the plural form. So, in this sentence, both of the twins are lazy. Both of the twins are lazy. This is referring to two people now, right? Although it is not exactly defining which exact twin, but rather it's indefinite in the sense that they are not referring to any specific person. But the minute I say both of the twins, I'm referring not to a singular subject, but now to a plural subject. So therefore, when I refer to a plural subject, then I will have a plural verb. That is as simple as that. And if you look at this, we have this one in the indefinite pronouns which are considered as plural. So again, let's look at the next ones. Few know what really happened that day. In this sentence, we have indefinite pronoun which is few. Indefinite pronoun few is there which can be considered as plural again. That means, what is the verb that I'll use? Few know what really happened. A lot of times people use few knows, which is incorrect in this sentence. You will have to use few know what really happened that day. Why? Because this is a plural verb following a plural pronoun. Now let's look at the next case, which is the case where we have indefinite pronouns that can be both singular or plural. And in that case, what will happen? We will have to look at whether the sentence is referring to multiple items or singular items. Words like none, all, some, most, more, any, either are considered as indefinite pronouns that can be either singular or plural. Let's take a look at this example here. All of the cookies are gone. Now here I have written are, right? Why have I written are? This is an indefinite pronoun, so maybe I can write it as a singular or a plural. So what is the choice that I've made? I have made the choice to write it as a plural verb. Why? Because it is referring to multiple cookies. So if it is referring to multiple items, then I will use the plural verb, which is are. If I say all of the cookie without the S, then I will write a singular verb. Why? Because although we have an indefinite pronoun, it is referring to a single cookie. So therefore, I will use a singular verb as well. So you understand three things. Some pronouns are considered as singular, and therefore the verbs that come with them will always be singular. Words like something, somewhere, somebody, or anybody, each other will all be considered as singular. Next one, if we have indefinite pronouns like many, few, several, both, or others, then we will consider them as a plural indefinite pronoun. Next one, if we have words such as none, all, some, most, more, any, either, We will consider them according to the item that it is referring to. If the item that it is referring to is singular in nature, then the verb will also be singular. But if the item that they're referring to is plural in nature, then the verb will also become plural. That is in the case of when you have these words and not others. Okay? With this, we will again move on to the next point, and that is subject that comes after verbs. Now, a lot of times we will always have the subject at the beginning of the sentence, and verbs will follow that subject. However, that is not always the case. In a grammatical sentence, we will not always have the subject in the beginning, but sometimes it comes after the verb as well. So we will have to identify where the subject is in this type of sentences. Like I said in the earlier class as well, you will always have to identify the main subject of the sentence and accordingly give out the verbs accordingly. So let's look at this one. There are many gaps in the literature. Here, what are we talking about? Are we talking about the literature or are we talking about the gaps? We are talking about the gaps, right? We're talking about not the literature, we're talking about the gaps that are in the literature. So, therefore, this is the subject. Gaps is a plural subject, so therefore the verb also becomes plural. One case is that sometimes the subject follows the verb. That means verb is coming before the subject. Subject comes after the verb. These type of sentences are always there in any English language that you find, any English literature or verse or sentences you find, you will also find this type of statements. In this case, do not get confused. Always try to identify the main subject and write the verb according to that, and it will become the grammatically correct sentence. If we look at this, here dash the answer. This one is a singular subject, the answer, right? So I'm talking about the answer, yes or no? So therefore, this one is the correct usage, which is a singular verb. Also, it is coming before the subject. So these are some examples where you will find that the subject are coming after the verb. So you cannot always base your verb on the subject that is coming before, but rather on the subject that is coming after the verb as well, which becomes very important for you to identify where the subject actually is and which verb is talking about what subject. Let's look on to the next topic, that is numbers and amount. What type of subjects will I use, or what type of verbs will I use when I have numbers and amount in a sentence? So please understand this. Whenever you're using numbers, percentage, or proportions, the correct form of the verb agreement depends on exactly what you're referring to. That means the subject that you're referring to, if it's plural, then you have to write the verb in the plural form. If you're referring to a specific number or amount of something, match the verb with the noun rather than the number. So if you're particularly referring to a specific number of something, you're not exactly saying, let's say, an exact number is not being quoted. If you're talking about proportions, let's say, right? Then that means you will have to refer to them to the subjects. But here they're saying if you're referring to a specific number, amount, or something, match the verb with the noun rather than the number. So let's take a look at this sentence. Three sentences are there for your understanding. Only 60% of the measurements are reliable. Why did I use a plural verb here? Because here they've given us a specific number, only 60%, right? And 60% of what? Measurements. Measurements is a plural subject again. So that means instead of basing my verb on this one, I am basing my verb on the plural subject. It is always important to remember that whenever we have numbers, we will consider the nouns that is surrounding them. So 10 meters, it is written in the plural form as, right? However, the noun that is following that very 10 meters is singular. So what will happen? The verb also becomes singular. We're not basing our verb according to the number, but according to the noun that follows the number, because it is exactly pointing to a specific number of that noun. So if I have 10 meters of the wires, then this one will become surround the core, which is a plural verb. So that is how you will have to approach this type of sentences when you have numbers. Let's take a look at the next one. Over 320 civilians reside in the area. Where is the verb in this sentence? It is reside. Reside is the verb. Now, in that case, what is it based on? Is it based on 320 or is it based on civilians? It is based on civilians and not the 320 number. So always remember, whenever you have specific numbers pointing towards the noun, you will have to write the verbs according to the noun that is being mentioned right after the number. And that will become easier for you to understand or write the sentence correctly. This rule also applies when the number refers to an unnamed noun. So I invited 10 people to the party, but only 9 are coming. So if you find that, it is the rule that we must keep on referring the verb according to the noun that is mentioned is applied here as well. Even though there is no specific noun named in the sentence, you will have to write the same rule according to that one. So 10 people are here and only 9 are coming. Now, why did I specify this as the plural verb? Because I'm talking about people, which is a group, not singular person, right? So 10 people means what are coming. Because this is a plural subject, therefore I've written a plural verb. Again, 30% say that they will vote in the next election. 30% say that they will vote in the next election. Now, there is no specific noun mentioned here, but see, they is given here, right? So I will not be able to write says. I will have to write say. This is a singular verb referring to these people. 30% say they will vote in the next election. So please make sure that you remember this rule. Next one, if the subject of the sentence is a number referring to a unified quantity of something, you use a singular verb. It is basically when we are talking about numbers that is talking about unified quantity. So $1,000 is actually talking about a unified quantity. So therefore, what is the verb that we will use? We will use a singular verb, which is. In fact, 63% is a better result than expected. So 63%, we're talking about the result, right? Which is a unified quantity again. So therefore, we will consider this a singular verb. The last one, which is proportions. Proportions basically means not specifically defining the exact number, but rather talking about the description of it. Okay, so when we talk about proportions, terms that describes a proportion of something are usually followed by the word of. So when we look at words that are defining proportions, we use word most of, some of, one of, right? One of the people or one of the citizens, some of the citizens, or most of the citizens. So when we use these words, it is basically understood as what? Proportions. So let's take a look at this example. The majority of the samples are contaminated. Whenever we are saying majority of the, what do? We are going to use this one, which is the subject. I'm talking about the majority of the samples, right? I'm not talking about the proportions, but rather talking about the proportion of the samples. So therefore, samples becomes the subject here. When I say the majority of the samples, what will I do? I will base it on the subject samples and not on this one. So if I have most of the, again, I will refer to the subject rather than the proportion itself. Let's take a look at this one. The majority of the sample. Now, what has changed? From samples, it has changed to sample, right? So I'm not basing my verb according to the proportion, but rather the noun provided in the sentence. Next one, 1/3 of the participants. Again, 1/3. I will not focus on that proportion. I will focus on the participants, which is the subject. What type of subject? Plural subjects. So therefore, the verb will also be plural verb. So with this, we are ending today's session. I hope you've understood all the topics that we've discussed till today, and please join us again for another such interesting class and another such interesting conference. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.